Okay, so on to serious and important things. While reading through different studies and perusing different news sites, I came across a couple of articles, I came across one article referencing two different studies I'd never seen that linked cancer and sugar, or specifically sugar intake to cancer, and started talking about artificial sweeteners as well. But since I'm not a doctor, I wanted to see what you guys had to say about this. The first study was from November of 2020, so just a couple years old. It was in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It involved 101,000 adult participants over a 6-year time span, and it found that total sugar intake was linked to a higher overall cancer risk. The pull quote out of here says, significant association with cancer risks were also observed for added sugars, free sugars, sucrose, sugars from milk-based desserts, those are my favorites, dairy products, and sugary drinks. These results suggest that sugars may represent a modifiable risk factor for cancer prevention, breast cancer in particular. The second study was from Cancer Epidemiology, Biomarkers, and Prevention, which is a magazine I get all the time. I don't know about you guys. The quick version of this study was published in October 2022, and it looked specifically at sweetened beverages, both regular and diet beverages. It followed over 900,000 participants for 34 years, starting in 1982, and it was watching specifically for 20 different types of cancer and cancer-related deaths. So this is where you guys have to jump in. If I read it correctly, drinking 2 or more sugary beverages a day was associated with a higher mortality from colorectal and kidney cancer. Mm-hmm. They wanted to see if these drinks elevated risk for obesity-related cancers over and above just being obese. So in other words, being obese has a higher cancer risk for these different types of cancers. Does drinking these beverages elevate it even beyond that, right? It seemed like most of them didn't, that the obesity was the biggest agitating factor. Artificial sweeteners, though, weren't much better, with an increased risk of pancreatic cancer that persisted after BMI adjustment. So again, this is me, the layman, trying to understand this. So they looked at how many people in the group got cancer, and then they said, are these rates higher than the rate of obesity in the group, correct? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what I'm seeing here other than just sugar is really, really bad for you and it feeds cancer.
Yeah. I mean, it seems it's another one of those studies that seemingly leads us down the path that we kind of already understand. You know, it's just a matter of trying to parse out more of, mechanistically what's happening. It's like, is there something in particular about sugar sweetened beverages that portends to more cancer? And so this shows that maybe that's the case, especially with, the ones that were highlighted, such as pancreatic cancer. But again, in both of the studies that we're going to be talking about, or just kind of like this body of evidence that we're talking about, these are all studies that can't show causation. And we'll often refer to this at the, as we start to dig through a given study.
Yeah.
These can only show us the association.
A correlation.
And again, nothing groundbreaking. The majority of people probably understand that. But again, it's not that sugar sweetened beverages cause cancer. Aspartame causes cancer. It's not, we can't quite go that far.
Right.
But at the same time, in nutrition studies like this, it's just, you're hard pressed to ever think a randomized controlled trial, the gold standard, would ever be done due to ethical reasons, just because of the fact that you can't, you can't just give these people all of one thing and not the other, and not potentially lead them down a trivial path there.
Right. Because if you discover that aspartame actually does cause cancer and you force fed it to people for 20 years, then congratulations, you just gave everybody in that group cancer.
Yeah.
So there's no way to actually do that study in an ethical manner.
Yeah. And also, in another kind of bird's eye view with all this stuff is in these studies, they're trying to control for a multitude of different things.
Right.
But the point is, the effort in doing so is valiant, and the statistical ways to do that are valid, and it's important, but it's hard. And the authors will admit that there's no way that you can perfectly control for every single confounding variable.
Right.
And all that's to say that, we just take all of these sorts of findings with a grain of salt, and we, maybe it helps us strengthen our position on certain things. Maybe it helps us kind of go back to the drawing board on certain things. But kind of in a nutshell, I don't think that these studies are going to make us make any groundbreaking recommendations.
Okay.
And so I think we can break it down.
That the artificially sweetened beverage cancer risk with pancreatic cancer, especially because they used the word robust after a BMI adjustment, was pretty interesting. Because, and again, this is for now without really diving deeper into it. It does go back to are these artificial sweeteners? They're not just tricking the tongue. Like, to what extent are they tricking the brain, and are they tricking the pancreas, and potentially causing some odd pancreatic and unusual pancreatic activity? I don't know that that's just a coincidence that was the one type of cancer that it was clearly associated with. I found that very interesting, because there's still always that hanging out there that what is there a trick within our body going on beyond just sweetness of the tongue? Because the other things that I have read linked to that if you the weight gain, if you eat an artificial sweetened, whether it was a beverage or whatever, you're just putting it on in your coffee,
right,
and that's all you have, that there's not really weight gain associated with that. But whenever you eat food with it, especially carb heavy food, that then you get a larger weight gain or larger blood sugar spike. If it just thinks it's sweet, but there's still nothing there to actually spike the blood sugar, that the pancreas functioned okay, but when it was super sweet and there was carbs there, that it did kind of almost follow the sweetening power of the artificial sweetener, because there was other food on board, and spiked blood sugar. So I kind of tied, because that's what was, I just started looking things up after I read that, because I just figured, what can't be, maybe it's a coincidence, but I just didn't think that it could be. But
so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that drinking a Diet Coke on its own, fine, whatever. But if you drink a Diet Coke and you have the burger, then you might as well have had a regular Coke, because it's going to have the same effect glycemically.
I wouldn't go that far.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think what Joey's saying is there is definitely more. There's more to it. And again, like they say at the end of all these studies, X finding warrants the
further research.
Yes.
Yeah, but I would definitely say that I was not saying that it would be worse than sugar is still sugar, always going to be worse. It was just a matter of comparing the effect of just the Diet Coke versus let's say a Diet Coke and a burger versus just the burger.
Right.
You would get more of a blood sugar spike from the burger and Diet Coke than you would from the burger alone. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Compare that. You can't.
Yes.
We can't throw the Coke in there because still too much sugar in that thing.
It's tough too. I mean, blood sugar excursions, like it happens. You know what I mean? And it's just the to the extent at which those happens, at which those happen is important too. So even though maybe that study had the changes reflected in blood sugar excursion or spikes, at the end of the day or at the end of a month to your A1C or whatever, it's like how much mechanistically all of that sounds like it's makes a ton
or if you're
of
doing
sense.
it once in a while.
Yeah, it's just
okay.
it's tough. It's all of those things. That's why it's like you kind of have to keep digging. You know what I mean? That's why. So it's who's to say a lot of those the smaller things, they don't necessarily add up to a higher A1C, let's say, especially in the whole picture of how often do you have a sugar sweetened beverage versus artificially sweetened beverage? What's your whole dietary pattern look like? It's just so
and
so hard.
Those we're talking about people doing at least 2 or more a day, which is that's not a small amount.
Definitely. This goes without saying, but it's just, I mean, eventually it's not just about comparing the sugar sweetened beverage to the artificially sweetened. I mean, we have to make sure that we're not treating these ASBs like water, that it's like water versus sugar. These are still
It's not that
but
there's-
then let's not go overboard and let's and act like they're as bad as sugar either, and jump down that rabbit hole that they're. So I just think because there's a tendency to want to be reductionist in these, and
Always.
let's dive down that it's like water for you,
Yeah.
and let's dive down that it's worse than sugar for you, and truth is in the middle, and that's where
Thank you for that. I mean, because honestly, the biggest thing is like, if it's everyone, we all agree that we could throw all this out if we could just all drink water all the time.
Yeah,
It's simply not realistic.
solves the problem.
Yeah.